What's going on, guys? Welcome back to an episode of Drinks and Kicks. I got Wilson here from Archive. Some of you may know if you shopped in the Valley. He's been doing this for several years. This is not his first shop. So Wilson, welcome to the show, man.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no problem, man. So I actually prepped some questions for some stuff. I did some research. I watched some of the other interviews and podcast stuff you did. I know a little bit about your background. Some of the audience may not know, but can you tell us a little bit of like what you were doing before sneakers?
Honestly, I've been doing sneakers for so long. I don't know if there really is anything besides that. Before sneakers, well, I guess before I took over it full time, I studied biochemistry at ASU.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I was gonna be a doctor. So did a 180 during COVID, and then ended up with selling shoes.
Yeah. You mind talking a little about that? When I heard that, I honestly did not know that detail. You mentioned it, what was it, the Young Boss podcast? And there was another, I think it might have been Sneak This or something, where you had talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just, I lived the prototypical immigrant family life, I'm Asian, so, the whole thing with the whole Asian immigrant thing is, you either gotta be doctor, lawyer, even engineer,
Yeah.
So, did all that, graduated with a 4.6 GPA, full ride, all that stuff. Went to ASU, got my biochemistry degree, med school, dropped out of that during COVID, and just decided to, open up a shoe store.
What was it during COVID that allowed you or propelled you to take that step to let me open a brick and mortar?
Honestly, it was just all the free time you had. You're just thinking about what to do, ways to make money, and just, even then I was still working. That was when I was working at Wayne's Closet too.
Okay.
So I was already in the whole shoe mix, but also just seeing how people treated healthcare workers.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna keep doing this for the rest of my life with people who don't appreciate whatever I'm doing.
Yep.
And there's a lot of doctors and nurses and anyone in the medical field. They do a lot for a lot less,
Yeah.
So I was just.
That's definitely one of those professions, I would say. Healthcare workers, teachers, a lot of people, especially during that time, like you're saying, everybody was working mad hours. People were being stressed, put in high-risk situations, especially with everything going on. You mentioned Wangs, too. Can you tell us a little bit about your sneaker journey? Because those who don't know, before this, you also owned Rerun, or were part owner of Rerun. So how do we get from Wangs to Archive?
So with Wangs, I met the owner Nate at a line at Undefeated. Now it's probably almost 10 plus years ago now.
Yeah.
We just chopped it up. Had similar mindsets, some of the same things, but he was very vintage, Supreme oriented. He didn't really know anything about shoes, and I was but he was in line for a shoe drop just because he liked it.
Yeah.
And I'm dude, the market for shoes is crazy. Because back then, the Wings just had a little corner of Supreme, and it was mostly denim and just a bunch of vintage.
Yeah.
And I'm dude, you should try out the shoe thing. The market for it is crazy. And with anything new, you're gonna be hesitant. So I was just all right, well, what if I just consign my stuff there? And he was okay, we could do it like that. And I think within the first week, it was we probably moved more product and money than that whole store did in a couple months.
Yeah, that's
and it was
crazy.
I was oh, people actually really want shoes, Cool, you could buy a Supreme tee, but let me buy a shoe that's worth 3 times as much as that. Yeah. And then it just kind of flourished from there, and he was I want you to work with me, blah blah blah.
Kind of expand.
Yeah, because back then it was just the OG crew, most people know, it was me, Anthony, Lonzo, and then Nate and his little brother, and Justin. We were kind of the OG crew back then.
The funny thing is, I hear those names and I've known them from other homies, but don't know all them guys directly. That's funny.
I mean, it's it's super Phoenix is a small big city.
Yep.
Everyone knows each other, so we were just there, and we just helped kind of pioneer that whole buy sell trade thing.
Yeah, I remember going in there because they've changed the stores. If anybody's been to Wang's locally, the way the store has looked has changed over the years. Remember the first time I went in there, they still had the whole, was it like right side all full of denim still?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like one of the first times I went in there.
The Notorious, we used to have it was just like a green floor. It was just like the ugliest floor from, back in the 60s, 70s. And we just kept it for the longest. And then now it's like, some nice tile or whatever.
Yeah.
We had that flooring for like the longest time.
I think it's crazy too, just to see the evolution of stores in general. Because now, I know they focus on like cards and stuff too. He sells a bunch of cards and other collectible stuff.
Yeah, Pokemon, collectibles. I think that's like his main focus now.
Yeah.
Especially like... because they do vintage also, like down the street.
The other store, so, that's strictly vintage.
Yeah, so that store doesn't sell vintage like they used to. They might have a little bit now, but they have the closet for the hype stuff, vintage, and then he does his like art stuff too.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how do we go from Wang's to making that jump to getting an opening rerun?
It was just same thing with COVID. We were just all working and like just long hours, and same thing. Whenever you're really good at something, you're gonna hit a plateau.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what it was. So the next step up was to do your own thing, and just a lot of people kind of like knew us from like all the deals that we're doing. Like, pretty much, I would say like 70 or 80% of everyone that did a deal during Wang's like probably talked to me at that point. So it was just like I knew everyone, did deals with everyone, hooked everyone, blah blah blah. And then it just kind of transitioned into, let me open up my own store.
Yeah, kind of building something for yourself.
Yeah, I did it with one of my buddies back then, and, we did it out in the middle of nowhere in Mesa, and we kind of proved the whole, you could be a destination spot, as long as people like who you are and you have something to offer them. Because that's the biggest question. It's like, can you open up a spot in the middle of nowhere, or... you're always afraid of not getting enough traffic or whatever, and we kind of took a risk over there because it's in Mesa.
It's pretty far.
Yeah, so it was just like, all right, but that's the thing, we had the best stuff, we had the newest stuff, we had everything early, like that's what people really wanted, and it became a destination hub.
Yeah, I remember that too, because that was one of the things is following the IG account first, and then finally making that fucking pilgrimage way out there. And then realizing where it was, I was like, "Oh shit, this is by Fiesta." Like, it's pretty far.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Fiesta.
I know, right? But now it's just like it's kind of like the Asian district.
Yeah.
So it's like you get really good food out there for sure.
Yeah, isn't the spot next to it? It's kind of like a food little thing or something.
Yeah,
a little market.
International market.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still there, but there's like the Korean corn dogs, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So obviously transitioning to here, you talk a little bit about that, like. I know you had mentioned again on a prior interview about like just having issues and how tough it is to work and have a partner.
Yeah.
You talk a little bit just about how the transition happened to moving down here and opening Archive.
No, it just like whenever you have partners, you always have to take everyone's consideration, right? And everyone's ideas might not mesh and blah blah blah, right? So you gotta figure out how to navigate through that, and if you have different directions than the other person, then it's like the easiest thing to do is obviously do your own thing, right? Mm-hmm. But also when you have you own something 100%, that's the nice thing is you can cut deals here and there. You're not cutting someone else in. You get to fully control what inventory, what stock is, whatever events, creative control of merch, all that stuff. So there's less loopholes to go through, right? And a partner is good when you need it. It's someone to back you up, it's someone to help guide you and all that stuff. And if it's your first location or whatever, by all means have a partner,
Yeah.
But then once you think you're ready and you have the reins, own something by yourself.
Wanted to dive into a little bit about partnership a little bit more. Do you think it would be more successful in a partnership if there was one person who solely focused on one aspect and that left somebody else to focus on it? So
yeah, if you look at most big corporations now, or whatever big stores, and there's multiple owners, that's kind of what they do. Private selection for one. There's a social media guy, there's a bot guy, and there's a marketing guy.
Yeah, so they have three pillars.
They have three people doing three different things. So, but I'm sure if one of them wanted to do something with marketing and be a bot guy, some toes might be stepped on.
Yeah.
So it's just, you got to learn to navigate it. But also another example would be, JC, he's no longer owns Urban.
Yeah, which I don't think a lot of people know. But
you have that. You have Round 2.
Yeah, that was interesting to watch that whole thing fall apart. Yeah.
Luke has his own store, and then
I heard Chris rolled off into the sunset. I heard.
Well, no, he still runs Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a Miami store or a New York store or a LA store or Virginia.
That was interesting.
You're on top of the world.
Yeah.
Now there's only one store.
That's what I was gonna say. It's interesting if anybody was along for that ride too, because I know I first learned about him. I used to help a homie do like sneaker events. We were doing Dunk Exchange, and I knew we were offloading shoes one time, and I saw the box, the replacement box they used to have.
Yeah, the brown box.
Yeah. So I remember looking at it. I was like, "Yo, what the hell is this?" And he's like, "Oh, that's a store from VA. Like, they have like a YouTube channel." And then watching the show, and then watching their whole progression of how it went from one store.
That YouTube was like, I think it kickstarted a lot of things for, I want to say like 60 or 70% of all stores now.
Yep.
Like, they all watched the show, and I think they all picked up on how they would buy, and they were one of the first stores to ever have someone proxy items from a store.
Yep, I remember the dude. Yeah. There was the dude in LA.
Mm-hmm. I think his name was Ariel.
Yeah, yep. He proxied some shoes for me. I remember paying him for some black OVO 10s. And some Don C2s, the blue ones. He got those for me too.
The Chanel bags.
Yeah, that shit's crazy, man. Being so big to have a proxy just by somebody that lived there. But that is true. I feel like a lot of things you see now, people, I don't want to say stole, because that's kind of a bad word, I guess, but like influenced by that.
Yeah,
like,
that's
cash out videos and stuff.
Everything is picked off from someone else. I don't think there's one original thought.
Influence is a better word. We should use that instead. But that's crazy. So then you opened Archive. The other thing I heard you say earlier too is like doing it in the height of COVID. How has business changed from? I mean, we all there. Anybody who's lived through that, who's into sneakers, know that it was booming. COVID times. And how have things transitioned now that it's not so booming? I know the economy's got a bunch of stuff going on. But how have you seen business change as far as like customer behavior and what they're into and how they buy?
So, I mean, I think now is almost like similar to, what was it? I think it was like 2016 when the Adidas hype was booming. What's the word? Like, drops were sitting, right? Because there's so much product. And people were kind of staying away from Jordans. They wanted the Adidas, the Ultra Boost, NMD, blah, blah, blah. We saw that last year with New Balance, Asics, even Saucony.
Yeah.
Because we saw every single Jordan sitting. Now this year, we're almost reverting back. Everything is limited again. We have the top 5 almost at 400 again.
That shoe surprised me, I think.
So everything is literally like a roller coaster. You have the ups and downs. It's all a cycle.
How do you navigate with like changing trends? I also work at another resale store also, and just like shifting around and trying to stay on top of trends, like making sure you move inventory as the trend's dying down. I think we kind of lagged behind on moving dunks when we should have. So it's kind of like now we've tried to like liquidate all that stuff so then we can start focusing on other items. How do you try to stay on top of that as the trends change?
You really have to know, like, I think the best thing to do is be in store.
Yep.
The more you're in store, the more you're gonna see like what people want, what people are gravitating towards, and you as an owner, you're gonna protect and you're gonna push your store better than anyone else, right? So you need to always be in store to look at these trends. We could have told you when, the Panda Dunk was gonna die.
Yeah.
We all saw it. We saw the shift. But at that point, you also gotta know when to take a loss or when to even break even. Some people are afraid to do that. You're not gonna make it anywhere if you're selling Pandas at 400.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you're lucky if you get 60 or 80 bucks for them. Don't be afraid of offers. That's another big thing. Like, if someone is gonna offer you something and you know it's been sitting for a while, put your pride aside and just take it. You know,
Keep the money going.
Yeah, like always, replenish and recycle everything.
Yeah, that's one thing I've kind of struggled with because I manage one of our locations, but like I come from like a marketing and data analyst background as well, so I know how to pull apart numbers and like I'll run reports and like, guys, we should be moving this stuff like 30 days, 90 days out. Things have been sitting for so long, or we hadn't had sale in this specific item for a while, and also seeing the trends like you were mentioning. It's like, we should reduce this so we can just keep the money flowing. Like, even like you said, if you break even on a product, like, all right, that's kind of dead. I can take that money, reinvest it into some other stuff that is kind of in the...
even if it's, you're freeing up money and space.
Yep.
Because that space is something that might be selling better.
Yeah.
That's a spot for it,
Yeah.
So you're double dipping with that.
That's kind of brought up an interesting point. I was thinking, where did you get like your business acumen from? Because you say your background was a little bit more in like healthcare.
Yeah.
So as you start opening the store and learning more about ins and outs of like the money and like when to invest and stuff, do you have like any mentors or anybody that's kind of you go to talk to for certain things? Or
honestly, not really. It was just my mentor was life. I grew up poor, so when you grow up poor, you learn different ways to make money, right?
Yeah.
You learn to hustle, you learn to always work. So, life is your biggest teacher.
Yep.
Once you figure out how to do it like that, and you actually just start applying it to, your business, you're gonna learn like you can go a lot farther with a lot less, especially if you have that hustler mindset. And obviously, like, people always look at the end product, right? Whether you have, the fancy shoes or the cars or blah, blah, blah. No one's ever going to look at, like, how hard you work to get there.
No one sees that.
And you can't ever take that personally, We'll always get the joke of, like, oh, it must be nice to be you, it must be nice to get that. And that's something everyone always says. But, like, if you worked as hard and you were spending the, 100-hour weeks back then, you could do the same thing, right? But no one wants to do that, right? You just look at the end goal and, you look at the millions and they have all this stuff. You don't ask what you ask to get there.
Yeah. That's funny because I work with a bunch of younger guys and having to deal with that too. It's one thing I've realized about some of their mindsets is like everybody wants the finish line, but it's like, you have to put in the work. And like do everything up front to get there. It's like you just want to jump to the end already.
Yeah, and trust me, no one wants to do the work because the work is hard.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not hard.
It's not glamorous.
Yeah.
Yep. That was the interesting thing too, is like I had a question I was thinking about trends and how trends are set as far as like the shifting of what really influenced the jump in your opinion from like dunks to I would say like the mesh runner, the A6 wave. Do you think it was a lot more of online influence stuff, or do you think people were just tired of it, oversaturation? Do you think the brand shot themselves in the foot?
Yeah, I would say the brand. It was just oversaturation. But it's like, if you have UNC Dunk sell out in 30 seconds, how you solve that problem? Just make more, right? But in terms of, the culture, oversaturation isn't always the key.
Yeah.
It's, people like the aspect of things being limited, no matter what they say. We don't always want everyone to get it, That's not the truth. We don't want that. Like, we want to be like, oh, it was so hard to get this, and I got it, That's what the culture is. No matter what, like, people can lie all they want, but...
I think that's the biggest thing. People are lying to themselves. Like, just admit it.
Yeah, 100%, like, no one liked 85s, but the red one was super limited. I like the shoe. I like the 85s.
I'm still a big fan of ones. I still have a shitload of ones.
Yeah. So, just 85s were never sought after, but because I made the red ones limited and the execution and all that, it's a $400 or $500 shoe. But most Jordan 1s right now barely at retail. So. Yeah,
that was an interesting one to see.
Make everything limited,
I think that's the funny thing too. We always like point the finger at dunks, but people forget that Jordan 1s also had a similar path where it was like they made it in almost a rainbow Marriott of fucking colors.
Yeah, what was it? They vaulted the 3s like a couple years ago, and then now, with the reimagined white cements and all that stuff, they're doing good. But I'm all for vaulting to one. They'll never do that, but I think that's something they should do.
Have you been in a long? I'm sure. Like I'm not sure how old are you?
I'm 29.
29. Cool. So you're a little bit, probably like one generation above you when it comes to stuff. But do you remember? It always used to seem like Jordan Brand had a schedule where it was every year.
Yeah.
It was a handful of different numbers, and they would release multiple colors in each one, and then the next year they would move on to another set.
Yep.
But it seems like more recently they've been sticking with like 2 or 3 models, and year after year, it's just more and more colors.
So that's kind of how their marketing team focuses things now. They'll select certain models that they'll push out a lot. I mean, right now we're in the 4s, right? With the Nike aspect of it, what was it? Last year it was like the Air Max 1, I believe, and this year they're pushing the Air Max 95.
Yeah,
So,
was it 30th anniversary?
Yeah, stuff like that. So, you know, they're purposely doing this stuff.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing. Like, back in the day, I would get the release schedule too, and I would be supplying whatever pound for pound, or didn't have those, yeah.
Charles,
who else was still here? Soul Assassin was here for a little bit, and he ran off with it.
Yeah, I remember that story too.
So, you know, trust me, I saw everyone, I supplied everyone, I did everything. Like,
yeah.
You know, it was a crazy market back then because people would be paying $400 for a Royal One.
Yep.
Now Royal Ones are $200.
The good old days.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's funny too. You talk about like brands having an agenda. Like, I don't know if people actually sit there and think about it as a business, and I think people, if you're a business owner, you understand how certain things work. But I think average consumers don't understand that point of like, they have an agenda, they have a plan. If you're smart enough to see it, like when they seed stuff to influencers, like they're trying to create that demand.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, you know, I guess consumers, you really don't need to, right? Like at the end of the day, you're a consumer. If you like something, you're gonna buy it, right? But there's always hidden agendas behind everything. I think Big Red Boots, another thing, you know. No one really liked it, but the way they marketed it and everything, like, it made it seem like the coolest thing in the world, right?
Wasn't they were going for like $1,000 at one point?
Yeah,
$800.
crazy. I mean, shipping alone on that shoe was like $200.
Yeah. And now that things you can get for like retail, I think what was it, like a $200
Dude, I think it's like
shoe.
$150.
But yeah, I think that's the other thing too people don't think about is like the marketing and stuff that goes behind it. I think it's interesting when they try to push a marketing and people don't bite, and like things kind of fall flat on their face. Not to say that you like to see people like fail, but it's one of those things where it's like you guys are trying to push something, trying to push this product on us, and nobody was asking for it.
Yeah, Vapor Maxes.
Yep.
That's a good example. It's a great shoe, but I think they tried pushing it a little too much, you know, and then now no one wears Vapor Max.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll wear it, but you don't see it pushed out on the app, you know.
I think the latest one for me I've been noticing is what was the Air Max DN is the new one.
That's also what was it, the Sunders?
Yep.
That's a good one. I actually really like that shoe.
Yeah. I still need the Kids at Immigrant one. That one's really nice.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like, to me it felt so forced. Like, you know that they have a bunch of colors coming down the line. At least I did when I saw the rollout.
Yeah.
I was like, they're putting a lot of energy behind it. They're trying to get a lot of people to talk about it, and I think it's like a very hit or miss.
And I think all these brands, they're always testing out feelers, and then when something is hot, they're gonna flood the gates.
Yeah.
Or they're opening the floodgates, right? Like, it's just, you know, we don't live in a time where everything's successful anymore, right? You gotta organically make something pop, and then you could push it.
Yeah. I think that's why, again, not to harbor back on the dunk thing, but I feel like an oversaturation with that happened where they saw a little bit of success and thought that they could just, you know, shove all this stuff in everyone's faces. And I feel like it worked for a little bit. The SB hype, I think, was kind of along with that, so that kind of helped out as well. But I think people just thought it was too much, like too many colors.
I mean, like right now, SBs are still doing really, really well. Like, since they're their own little factions, SB can do the storytelling aspect of it, and they can almost create their hype organically. What was it? Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah.
Like the secret friends and family pair and all that stuff. Like,
what was that limited to? I know they were.
I was like, I'm trying to remember. Someone did an X-ray.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's what I was about to bring up.
I know it's less than 200. I think. But yeah, like, you can organically make stuff like that and push out stories. Whether it's even the Udos, right? But you can't do that with the black and white dunk or Iowa dunk. Like, it's a colorway. They make it, they push it out, and then it's done.
From a personal standpoint, how much does storytelling affect, like, how much you like something?
Honestly, I'd say a lot. It's like that will determine whether I want to keep it or how long I want to keep a shoe. Like, most of the stuff, like a Bread 4 or white cement, I'll wear it, but I have no attachment towards it. It's a nice shoe, it's cool, but like, if someone offered me X amount of dollars, I have no problem letting it go. Yeah. Where, let's say, the Brick by Brick that came out this year, the storytelling was flawless, the packaging cool, like, literally, they marketed that shoe almost to perfection. Yep. That makes me not want to give up the shoe, So when it's just another release, it's another release. But you make something cooler, you give it a story behind it. Like, even the Bookers that just dropped today, If
Wasn't a fan.
Yeah, but if you waited in line and you met Book, you got it signed, you're probably not going to want to
get rid of it. Up. Yeah. That was one thing we talked about too when we see trends, like people coming into the store and like everyone asking for 4s. Yeah. And people just like recycling stuff. That's one thing I try to tell. Again, I work with a bunch of younger guys, so I talked to them about it, and I was telling one of the dudes about this. Like, people don't have that attachment to anything anymore. When you get the product solely online and you're not standing in a longer, like, in-person line waiting for hours, you have less attachment to that physical thing. So it's easier, like you were saying, to give it up.
Same thing, like Jordan's not playing anymore. Like, the younger generation can't get attached to a block cement. Right? Yeah. Like, they don't see it the same way as someone who watched them play. Yep. That's why stuff like these events are so important, because now you're creating new memories and new things for the younger generation to attach to. Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, like, the Kobe Fade to Black, when he scored the 60 points, that's something someone's gonna remember forever. Yeah. Not like a random Kobe AD colorway, that they're just trying to push. So.
Yeah, I remember all those 80s, all the like subline stuff that they released.
Yeah, I don't know why.
What would you say is a big misconception that a lot of people have about either you personally as like a sneaker owner or like sneaker owners in general? Sneaker shop owners, I should say.
That we get everything for retail.
Yeah.
That's easily the biggest misconception. We pay people. Yeah. We try to pay well, but we also got to pay to where we can make money on it. The biggest thing is, like, let's say a Travis Scott came out. No one is gonna sell me a Travis Scott for like 100 under market, right? Usually with stuff like that, I pay market, right? Especially if it just came out. And then people will be like, why is this, X amount of dollars? What do you think I paid the person who wanted to sell it to me? Yeah. No one's ever gonna be happy. But some people understand, like, oh, it's the convenience, right? And also you get to trade whatever. That's another thing people don't realize. Like, the price is the price, because sometimes people trade 3 or 4 pairs of shoes for it, and you gotta make your money, whether it's from the trade or the initial price, right? Yeah. So nothing in life is free. Nothing in life usually comes at retail, especially in the retail
this day and age. Yeah.
Like, if you can make money on it, you're gonna want to make money.
Yeah, I think as long as you're fair from the seller standpoint and the buyer standpoint.
There's so many aspects when it comes to buying something. Like, you could try to be fair in terms of price, but then also there comes a thing in which people might bring something older that might be worth a lot. Yeah. But because of what it is, it's gonna sit for a long time. Time is another thing, I don't want to hold on to a Space Jam for 7-8 months, especially if I'm gonna pay top dollar for it. So you gotta figure that into whenever you're buying something.
Yeah. So that just brought up an interesting thing I was thinking about. Do you have in your mind, like when you're buying a product for the store, how long you ideally want to hold on to it?
Yeah. So, usually with new releases, it shouldn't be in the store longer than a month, Yeah. staple products can be in here for 6-7 months, like bread flours, I don't know, like a black and white gum SB, like stuff like that can be here till Christmas. Someone's gonna buy it for full price.
Yeah.
But like, if you were selling a Verdi, for probably when it came out, they were probably like $450, right? They're not that high anymore.
Yeah.
Your Verdi should be now like 300-ish. So if it's past that date and the price isn't adjusted yet, then you held it way too long.
Yeah.
So you gotta always be dynamically changing it to get something for a lower cost, and then you can use that to lower the price too.
So that brings up an interesting thing, just from a business standpoint and how you operate. How often are you like checking market and updating prices and stuff like that?
Honestly, every day.
Yeah.
Like with this day and age, like, you know, they might do a shock drop and the market might tank. Like, I need to push something out at, you know, a break-even point if it crashes, or a little bit of a profit if it's that bad. You know, I don't want to hold on to it to the point where, let's say, more orders come in and then it tanks it even more.
Yeah.
You know?
I was gonna say, you say that, I think you're talking about a specific situation that just happened recently.
SB4.
Yeah, exactly.
SB4s were selling at $550 at one point. Now it's like $350.
So when instances like that happen, do you usually try to be more aggressive about the pricing and trying to get rid of it just because you don't know if the market's going to continue to slip? Or
yes and no. Like, certain shoes are good. But like, that's a good shoe. You know? Like, I guarantee you it's not going to be this price during Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't mind holding on to some of it, but I'm gonna buy more to, you know, adjust my buy-in price for sure. But something like, I don't know, what's something that crashed really bad? Maybe like the military blue floors, right?
Yeah.
They're at retail. At one point, people were selling them early for $500. Now they're at $200. But it's a great shoe.
Do you feel like, I personally feel like the SB kind of aided in that downfall too, because this shoe is very similar.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was like, why get the military when I can get that SB name?
Yeah, but some of them are almost the same price as the militaries too.
Yeah.
Or some size militaries might be higher than the SBs.
Yeah, that's true.
But, you know, people are going to have their preference whether you want the Nike Air or Nike SB. But at the end of the day, if you know it's a shoe that's going to sell well, I don't mind keeping it. I just got to make sure my price reflects that. Yeah.
That's something I didn't think about too. When you just mentioned it, I thought it as like a detriment, like the market crashing and you as the seller being like, oh fuck, I'm going to lose money. But you brought up a good point. That just means you can buy them now for cheaper and hold on to them until like Christmas time.
Yeah, it's something like, you spend a lot less if you want to keep your store full nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, back in the day, Pandas, at one point the buying was almost like 180, 200.
Yeah.
Right? So now if you wanted a store with a full size run of Pandas, you could get them both for $40-$50, and your store will look more full.
Yeah. So
you're spending a lot less to make your store look more full. You just gotta make sure you buy the right product.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, right? Like buying bulk. How do you establish or any kind of insight? Not necessarily pointers, not to like give too much away, but just like your insight on establishing those relationships to be able to get like bulk product and stuff.
It's pretty much what you said. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
So the longer you're with someone, the more you buy from them, the more trust they put in you, the easier it will be to get bulk stuff.
Yeah.
I guarantee there's not anyone out there where they're just like, this dude's someone new, I'm gonna give him the best pricing on bulk, blah blah blah. The first time, you're probably gonna get hit upside the head a little bit because they need to see if you're serious, if you're a serious buyer, and if you can actually take whatever that they're selling.
Also, like if you're just gonna be a one and done guy, or if you're gonna keep coming back to me.
Why would I hook someone up when I can, you know, sell this unit for a lot more individually?
Yeah. You
sell bulk usually for convenience, but if it's someone that's only gonna be there once, why are you gonna help them out?
Yeah.
So, just the more you buy, the more you'll probably get helped out.
Another question too, I kind of wanted to shift a little bit just to, we've kind of been talking about it, but in the vein of like the ins and outs of actually running a shop and running a business. Given the current climate right now, do you think it would be a good opportunity or a good time, I should say, for someone to jump into it? Do you always feel like that's a good time, or is this something where it's like, hey, if you're not in it right now, like maybe now's not the best time?
Honestly, there's never a good time to open up a business because it's a risk, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in yourself, you're not gonna do well.
Yeah.
Like you really have to just dive into it like 10 toes down, because if you have nothing to lose, your business really isn't gonna flourish. Like you have to really be doing this stuff and believe in your product, right?
Yeah.
Believe in yourself, believe in your product, and you should do good. If you have like a netting or something to fall back on after this, like you're not fully in it. Like,
Yeah.
You're just gonna be like, oh, I had a bad day. Like I'm gonna work at my other job. Stuff, you know, you have to really be invested into it if you want to do well. Like people gotta know that this is something you really want to do.
Yeah. So be fearless too. I guess that's what you're saying.
Like during COVID, everyone was making so much money. 10, 20 different stores would open up in a month or the next month.
Yeah.
They're all gone by now, you know? Like, the strong survive, and the people that created genuine relationships in a community, those are the ones that are still here, right?
Yep. Yeah, because I think to that point, almost everybody that I know, like, knows you too. Like, I've heard your name come up a lot. A lot of people talk about Wilson.
You know, it's literally just doing a transaction. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know, whether you hook someone up, even if you don't hook someone up, the fact that you did that transaction, that's something they're gonna remember forever.
Yeah.
You know, you're not gonna be the most liked person at all times. That's the fact of life.
Yeah. With that, like in that same realm, any advice you would give to people as far as like how they do business and interact with customers and just other sellers and stuff in general?
Just be transparent.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Like, you know, the more honest and transparent you are, the easier that deal is gonna be. People gotta know, like, they know you're gonna make money, right? They should just not feel bad about you wanting to make money. Like, if you can leave someone happy and you can leave happy, like, that's the most ideal situation, right? And
I've heard, sorry not to cut you off, I just heard something that was similar. They were talking about negotiations, is they're just saying, it's like the best negotiation is when both people feel like they slightly lost.
Yeah,
I heard the opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why it was funny when you said that. I think that was more so in like contract negotiations. It was a podcast with Andrew Schultz, what they were talking about, like negotiating. He was talking about with Netflix or some shit.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just talking about a good negotiation is when both parties leave like slightly upset, like they could have got a little bit more.
I totally understand that too. I think with this, you could totally do the same thing, because it's like, I could have made more money, but I think with, you know, shoes, it's just like, as long as both people are happy and both made whatever money, like, you'll be fine. And that's a repeat customer.
Yeah, I agree with that, wording it that way too, because I feel like it's you should both, it's like, regardless if this shoe you could have got a little bit more from it, like, you know, it's not a shoe that you're really gonna wear, and hopefully whatever you trade or sold it for or whatever, it's something that you are gonna want to wear and appreciate more.
The biggest thing people forget about is convenience, right?
Yep.
If you want more money, you take the time, you figure it out, go on eBay, you do all that stuff, but that's not convenient.
Yep.
You can't expect me to provide everything for you and do the work, and you just sit back and relax and get all the money.
Yeah.
Right? You want the most money? You sell it on your own.
Yep. Take the time, hold on to it, post all the pictures.
Exactly. If you want your quick cash, you know, some people are happy making $20 over retail.
Yeah.
You know, like, but if you did that 100 times over, that profit gets pretty large, right?
Yeah. I think the other thing too is people don't see it from a percentage standpoint. $100 retail shoe making $20, just 20%, bro. Like.
Yeah.
Any other investment, a good investment is like 10 to 15% return.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, look, you know, any restaurant, they're only making 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
You know? Most businesses 20 to 30. Once you get to like reselling, dude, sometimes like a Travis Scott, you're making, 500, 600%.
Yeah.
You know, people don't realize that.
Yeah. Like, what other business are you gonna get that kind of return?
Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to start trying to wrap it up a little bit more. Just things about business. What one thing I noticed too when I was looking at the store, and I don't know why I didn't notice it before. It's like, you guys don't have a website.
Yeah.
What's kind of the thought process behind that? Given that everyone's now, it's like, oh, it's a digital age and online presence and stuff like that.
We want to be there digitally, so we're there through Instagram and Facebook and stuff, social media. That's our thing, because we're always like, our stuff's always
fast turnaround,
right? And we're getting stuff all the time. So, by the time I might be able to upload it and put the details on the website, it's already gone.
Yeah.
That's why Instagram works so well. I could post something, take a picture, and someone might buy it within 30 seconds, right? Website takes a little bit more time, but also the biggest thing with a website is chargebacks.
Yeah.
No one protects you, no big company, no processing thing. They can offer something, but no one protects you,
Yeah.
If someone's got an Amex, they want to charge that back, even if they're in here, that bank is always going to side with them. You just lost out on $500. When you're vetting them and you're talking to them directly one by one, you can tell who might be, a scammer or who's not serious. Like, if they seem sketch, you could just tell them. I don't want to sell to you, or the good old, I'm gonna give you my credit card, no ID. Run up $2,000. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. It's just, it's a gut feeling too. But luckily for us, we try to, we talk to all of our customers, and most of them are returning customers. So like, no one wants to be burned at a place where they're gonna continuously shop from. So that's just super important.
What's your plans for like the future? Like, what do you want to do with the store? Is there anything you have ambitions to do maybe outside of sneakers going forward, or kind of where are you at with that right now?
As far as that, like, another store is always in the I guess the category of what's next, but like this location is, I think, almost perfectly prime. Like,
just based on retail. People who don't know where the store's at, like,
you got
pretty prime retail
you
partners.
Banner, there's a bunch of other resale stores here, but location is super important. But another store is in the, that's always in the air. Even maybe something else that's retail, that's always something we could always do. I never want to do mall. Mall's not something in my heart that I enjoy. It's just
if you've ever worked retail, our location that I currently work at is in the mall. So I feel you, bro. Like,
what mall?
Arrowhead.
Okay, so I used to be a manager at Shoe Palace back in the day, and so I worked at Chandler, Scottsdale. I did Arrowhead. I did Mills. Premium outlets, all that stuff. So mall life is the worst. Like, it's a job. It's traffic is always steady. But it's because usually whatever owner is paying an X amount in rent and in terms of profit sometimes.
I feel like there's a give and a take, and you can see it too with the customers. Like, the interesting thing is, I try telling the guys too, just to like impart knowledge and insight on certain things. It's like we get a lot of foot traffic, but a lot of those are not necessarily our target demo. They're not like sneaker collectors. It's a lot of casual people. You get a lot of people coming in, it's like, why are the sneakers this price? And like, Shoe Palace or something's right down the way, and they have a similar shoe for X amount. And it's like going that whole thing about educating the customer, like, we're a resale shop. Like,
when you're in the mall, like, that's when that salesmanship really does come in. That's why those places have commission and stuff, because sometimes if it's not like a retro drop, you have to convince them on why they should buy this.
That's the other thing too. It is a grind for sure. Anything else you'd like? Diversifying investments, like, any other types of business, restaurant, anything like that, food trucks?
Food is.
I know you're big into cars.
Cars is always a bad investment. It's a money pit, but everyone likes fast cars. But restaurants is cool. All my friends own restaurants, so it's like, and I see how stressed they are, so I probably don't want to do a restaurant. I don't know, this type of stuff is cool, like the margins are really good. The only other thing that's as good would be like real estate. Everyone wants to do real estate because they think it's quick money, but same thing with this. It's a lot of hard work. You gotta know the right people. You gotta grind for it. But real estate is cool. E-commerce stuff. That's always another avenue.
Yeah, I noticed you guys have done like some archive merch and stuff in the past, but any thoughts about expanding that and investing more into that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just always like the biggest thing is making the right, t-shirt or design, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than having a design that doesn't sell out, right? And it's like, luckily all of our, all the drops that we've done have sold out.
Yeah.
But it's like you never want to put in something that's gonna flunk, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem with merch. Like, not everything's gonna be a hit.
Yeah.
You're gonna have some misses, but until that happens, you don't want it to happen.
Yeah. It's also it takes like energy and stuff
Yeah,
too.
100%.
Time
Even
energy.
us designing a sticker, like I gotta think about it, placement, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Even ordering it, it's all part of the process.
Yep. Cool, man. I think that's all I have. I don't know if you had any questions or anything else you'd want to talk about.
No.
Do you want to plug the shop again? We're at Archive Phoenix here. Do you want a location and then like the socials and stuff? And where we can find you?
So we're on Central Countback here at Uptown Phoenix, 5032 North Central Avenue. Store's called Archive. Instagram is ArchiveAZPHX. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff.
Cool. Once again, man, thanks for speaking with me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.